Welcome to episode 624 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and I am joined by Kevin Williams today. Because, Kevin, we have a job to do, a huge job to do. We have to soak in the Bayern win because I got some criticism yesterday. I said, welcome to episode 623 of the Barcelona podcast, and they let me know in my comments that my dead eyes after a victory like that was unacceptable. So I almost want to do the intro again and say, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 624 of the Barcelona podcast. Barcelona yesterday won one of the more monumental matches in the last 10 seasons, and it was a big moment. I enjoyed it. I know you enjoyed it. We had some fun. Sometimes watching football in Barcelona is fun, and so we have to do that, and then we have to completely flip the switch and preview El Clásico. So all that joy and wondrous feelings we have might dry up in less than 24 hours. That is the task we have ahead. But I think the term that I want to begin with, obviously, before we even do the tactics, because I would, having had more than 24 hours, 36 hours to soak in the tactics of that match, I have more to add from what I did from the 5 headlines. So I do want to get into the X's and O's and give more praise to why Barcelona wound up winning 4-1, even though they didn't win some of the statistical categories like that layman's might think of, like possession and like. But I gave my feelings on the 5 headlines. It was really, I'd say, a monumental day. Having hosted this show for 7 years and done every match review for the last 5 of them, I can tell you that it felt good. It felt good, and I don't want to let that feeling go. Like, it was a big win, and so I just want to get your feeling, your vibes. You know, obviously you have a reputation of being very not negative, but yeah, you know
Level.
yourself. Yeah, level. You're very level, to the point where it seems like you're being negative at times. So, again, you're there for the highs, you're there for the lows. What were your vibes after yesterday?
For me, it was basically thank the heavens for individual brilliance, right? As much as we want to, you know, turn our noses up at the concept of individual brilliance, right? We laud a player in Lionel Messi who drips individual brilliance, from every fiber of his being. But there's this notion that proper football is supposed to be this, delicate yet elegant, right, thing that is this inexorable path, toward this eminently logical goal. And for me, what made those goals stand out is with every one of them, right? One or two players did something where you think, holy hell, there aren't many players in football who can do that. And that's individual brilliance, right? That cross pitch pass from a Casado, come on, right? Because A, Lewandowski sees the setup and calls for it. B, Casado can make that pass from nothing, right? C, Rafinha takes the ball and does the nutmeg shot. I mean, there's no shame in that sort of individual brilliance toward what was really more of an exorcism, right, than a victory. If you think about the torment that Bayern has visited upon Barcelona, beginning with the 7-0, right? Where we're over 2 legs, they won 7-0, and Xavi said, well, we won possession, so there's that. It's like, yeah, dude, nice. And then all the match, and the only joy was when the Luis Enrique's side came in and knocked off Guardiola, but then came more misery. So for me, my living room whoops of exultation were because that was an exorcism, right? It was purging of all these demons. I don't think that anyone expected a win. I think most people would have been thrilled with a draw. And to have a decisive win where, except for about 15 minutes of the match, it was well in hand. And like, I didn't even know how to watch that match because the apprehension, right? The
Mm-hmm.
nervousness, because it's Bayern and right? And like, so when does the onslaught come? Right? And the onslaught came, but it was controlled in a way that was really interesting, right? Defensively, right? And mostly in the midfield. So it was one of the most enjoyable matches I've seen in a very long time because of the result versus the opponent. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what this will mean for the team moving forward, right? As you say, we have 24 hours to have but I think that even win or lose tomorrow, I think that this team it took a whole new batch of players to remove the psychological burdens that have been heaped upon this team. I mean, I'm trying to, there was nobody in the starting 11, let me think, who had been around during any of those Bayern beatdowns. So it was just
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so this is another team. We have our tactics and we have this stuff we need to do. And let's just, go out there and do it. And it was really fascinating to watch a team play with freedom. Now, even as we shouldn't delude ourselves, right? This is me being me, right? We shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking that those 4 goals came from anything that wasn't the footballing parallel of fairy dust. And fairy dust works, right? I don't want to, say, oh, it's fairy dust, right? I don't want to diminish those 4 goals in a way because they're all fantastic goals. But to have Rafinha, right, knocking a hat trick of 3 exceptionally good goals
Mm-hmm.
versus um, the team's European nemesis, don't rely on that as a regular football
Mm-hmm.
diet. Enjoy it, savor it, run around the room screaming like I did, but don't think that's normal, right? I think what we'll see Saturday will be more like normal.
Well,
How's
yeah.
that for a lead in?
Well, yeah. I got a few things for you. So I with the 5 headlines. I'm not sure if you would see my 5 headlines. My fifth headline was "Let the Demons Die," and I had the exact same feelings about exercising what was to me again just that feeling, the apprehension that Kool-Aid's had going into so many European nights to that point. I did also say in the case of Rafinha, I said that it was, I'd say, the biggest match in Rafinha's career, just because it is a legacy defining game for a player. Again, especially a Brazilian player. There is something about Brazilians at Barcelona, and you dream about playing for that club. And to have a hat trick against Bayern Munich in Europe, even if he was in the league phase, I know it's not the knockout stage, but Barcelona had to have this kind of performance in a knockout stage to really feel like they could contend again with the European elite. And I think that was to me, that was the big difference. That last night, this is a team that finally, after, what was it, 2017 against Bayern Munich, even with Messi, or well, really, no, honestly, 2018 against Liverpool, Barcelona were the best team in Europe, and they've found a way to, we don't need to rehash that. But it was, with the exception of that, like back in 2018. So we're still talking 6 years. It's been 6 years since you felt on a European night that Barcelona could contend with the elite in Europe and could contend for the Champions League trophy. And that's what that match last night did, regardless of how it happened. Now, to your other point, just want to let a little addendum here. If Ter Stegen and De Jong now De Jong did not start, he did play, but De Jong and Ter Stegen would have been your little entry to the asterisk of, having been there for the European failure before. But
Yeah.
they did not, obviously Ter Stegen out, and De Jong did not start the match. Okay, now, actually, in layman's terms, I want to say this. You said fairy dust, and I actually want to rename that into Flicks fairy dust, because The fairy dust that Flick put on that match was very purposeful, though, because when he came in and I had conversations with my friends over the Bayern Munich stuff, we talked about the tactics with the purist of what Hansi Flick was going to do. And I think the baseline consensus that anybody who had watched Flick before was going to say is that obviously he plays that high line. He's going to play a 4-2-3-1, and it's a lot of high risk, high reward, but he sets a basis of this is my expectations of what the team does as a unit, and then I want individual brilliance. And I feel like, yes, I think poor Xavi is getting a little obviously a referendum on him because it's basically the same team that has increased in their level. But the difference is, I think, between even the team that existed with personnel wise. So this isn't even about Xavi. This is just about Dembele. There are little changes as to what Flick does. Let's use Rafinha as the example. I think one of the big reasons why Rafinha is excelling in Flick's system is because he is the player in this system that does not need the ball to feet, but is instead playing into space. And he's playing a very similar role with that individual brilliance that we talk about than Dembele was asked to do. But Dembele needed the ball 2 feet. And so if you look at where Rafinha is, he's played basically central if you see that heat map. And so his job is to run like heck and work on that press. And I just, unit-wise, that's why I want to say really the majesty of Flick and what seems to be not just individual brilliance, but sustainable is the good things that this team did as a unit, because they did as a unit outplay Bayern's game plan. And somebody again mentioned in my watch along, it showed you the inexperience of company against the experience of Flick in European competitions, regardless of the team that was around that they were speaking to. So that high risk, high reward for both teams, to be very reductive with it. If you're going to play a high line, which both teams were going to do, if you're going to press, like both teams are going to do, very much in a mirror image of each other's 4-2-3-1, then you have to keep up that consistent pressure at the top of the point of the attack or at the top of the attack on the opponent's high line and their goalkeeper, so that the opponent cannot play through you. If they can play on the ground through you with the ball, you're in trouble. They have to, of course, playing that high line, they're going to try to play it over the top, and you just have to defend, and you have to get those little 50-50 moments right. And then the other two, B, is that you have to press as a unit for the entire time. And more specifically, you have to stay compact without the ball if you're going to play a high line. And that was the biggest difference between Xavi's press and Flick's press, because Xavi's press, the ideas were there. And I always praised him that he would get it right. I'd watch the first 10 minutes of so many matches, and I'd say, Xavi did his homework. This is what the opponents of the weakness are XYZ, and you see the setup that he was trying for. But it either wasn't the personnel or it didn't have the continuity in that press for 90 minutes to be able, especially in Europe, to survive against teams that had a much clearer game plan and could also mirror Barcelona in the individual brilliance that they had. Because Bayern could have done the same thing yesterday. They could have had the exact same formation, played the high line, played the press, and with their individual brilliance of Gnabry, of Kane, of Kimmich, especially of Olise, who's very dangerous, they could have had the individual brilliance to match Barcelona tit for tat. But they didn't, because Barcelona were more compact and they pressed better over the course of 90 minutes. And they kept their game plan. And last thing I'll add here, Hansi Flick kept that high line. It was an offside goal, and then there was the 1-1. And Barcelona on the back foot. And instead of changing everything up and sitting deeper or saying, hey, we're going to concede that we don't have the ball, there was bravery from Hansi Flick and said, hey, this team is good enough to rely on this. So all he did, I mentioned it on the 5 headlines, and I'll say it again. I thought Clásico, he won more 50-50s. That just happened. And then Pedri's ball retention rocketed up to magisterial, as Ray Hudson would say, levels. And you could not take that ball off Pedri from the 21st minute on. And to that point, in the 67th minute, I had written into my notes, he had this little pirouette. And even it was 4-1 already at that point, of course, so I'm not going to do a victory lap on this. But he did this little pirouette in the 67th. And I said, I don't care if there's 23 minutes left. Barcelona are going to win this freaking game because they're not going to make enough mistakes to give Bayern the breath that they're going to need to come back in the game. And to the point about the tactical switch that was made, Clásico and Pedri were then just pushed a little bit higher. That's the only change that happened. From the 1-1 and the offside goal, Barcelona just pushed Clásico and Pedri a little bit higher, so they won balls a bit better. And the one downside of that would have been that Bayern could have found Olise or the fullbacks, because both Davies and Guerrero, that was the one difference, that the fullbacks for Bayern invert, where for Barcelona, they keep that width. And so if Bayern could have found Olise or the fullbacks inside more, then that that is the hole that then opened up if you're going to push your midfielders in Clásico and Pedri a little bit higher to win those second balls. And as we talk about that line of confrontation, push that line of confrontation even higher. It meant that instead of conceding pressure, and I think like many coaches for the last few years for Barcelona would have dropped everything deeper, Flick decided to be brave and push things even higher and said, hey, I trust my players are good enough. And Clásico, as to that point, 9 ball recoveries yesterday, dispossessed just one time. And so he really, and Pedri as well, like they just raised their level and the team was good enough. The other thing too, just tactically, that in years past, and this is no disrespect to whoever was on that left wing for all these few years, Memphis Depay, whoever you want to name, the difference is that when Davies and Guerrero get forward into those half spaces, they had to be very conservative because Lamine Yamal and Rafinha being the threats on the other side in those half spaces, especially with Rafinha going central, they could not make those runs as much as they do in the Bundesliga when they're winning matches and they're scoring goals and everything is working for them. So they were pinned back a little bit farther, and Flick kind of bet on that. And he said, hey, Lamine Yamal needs attention. Like Bayern Munich did their homework. Like, hey, we got to double team him the minute he gets across half field. And so, even though, I mean, Lamine Yamal still had brilliant balls. The one that was the one over the top that led to the third goal. It's hard to, I mean, just the kid is good. Like, I mean, we're not going to talk about, Lamine Yamal, I think, too much here. But yeah, so that's my big diatribe on having seen it all again. Hansi Flick showed bravery, but he just did the same thing that company wanted to do, and he did it better. And that's why I say that Flick's fairy dust, because he got the individual brilliance that you speak about. But I think the floor for this Barcelona team, with especially like the 11 or players that he really wants to get on the field without all those injuries, they're a good team. They're good, and Barcelona's good, and I'm excited by that.
What is fascinating for me, returning to your notion about Dembele, is it's funny because people will always say, well, we have Lamine Yamal, who is not great on Dembele, and there's no question that he is. I mean, but for me, what would have been really interesting in having them both on the same team would have been, remember that Ronald Koeman used Dembele centrally for 2 matches and had a lot of success. And then I'm not sure why he went back to parking him on the right and saying, yeah, go over there and uh, do things. I think a team with Lamine Yamal on the right wing and Dembele running that channel like Rafinha would have been very interesting to watch. And I mean, as I say with every player who leaves Barcelona, right, good riddance to bad rubbish. But that was fascinating. And for me, so my issue with Xavi, well, one, that he never should have gotten the job. 2, he had good ideas, but they weren't fully formed, and he could not really communicate them to his players. Right? They made sense in his head, right? In the second greatest midfielder to ever play the game, underwhelming his own teammate, but he never got those concepts to his team in a way that made them make sense for them. And he was vertical to a fault. And, they should have won that PSG, like even down to 10, right? But they kept giving PSG the ball, and it's just like Xavi never really, it's like a kid with PlayStation, right? He has this concept and he's unwilling to adapt it or shift it. I think that the Flick team has much better ball discipline. Now, the thing about him versus Xavi is, it's the same personnel basically with a couple of. I think that having Casada makes a monstrous difference, right? And he wasn't ready when Xavi was there. It's a shame that Bernal went down with knee injury because I think they would be even better
Yeah,
with
me
him.
too.
I
That was really
think that
critical.
Fermin Lopez is ready now. I mean, people forget, but I mean, he was fantastic against Bayern, and he has heretofore been useless as a member of the X1, but really good as a sub. This is the first match where he was fully on and firing all cylinders. He has really matured as a player. So there are some notable exceptions that Flick has that Xavi did not have. But even beyond all that, Xavi just wasn't ready. And I appreciate that people, give him the some credit. But for me, he was just not ready, not not a good manager of humans, right? In that crucial way that makes players want to excel for you. Notice how differently Flick interacts with his team, right? Notice the lack of yelling and histrionics on the sideline. No cards yet, right? I mean, he's a completely and manager is needs to make his team have confidence and have belief. And when you act like too many managers do, not just Xavi, right? Teams feel like I'll go back to Phil Jackson with the Bulls, right? No matter how bad the Bulls played, Jackson would sit there with his legs and arms crossed, just kind of going, hmm, let's let them play out of it, right?
That's why they call him the
And,
Zen Master. That was his.
you
I mean,
know,
that's why they call him the Zen Master.
and that's important. And I think that the way Flick approaches the game is empowering for his team, right? I mean, leaving aside, the exceptional um, players he has right now, it's that big difference. Now, leading into Saturday, right? Everything they could successfully do against Bayern, Real Madrid has an antidote now, right? You know,
Wait, before we do Real Madrid, yeah, I'm gonna fully pivot. The last thought I had on Bayern Munich, though, as you were saying about, I just gonna do a little Fermin Lopez La Masia thing, and then then we'll set the stage for Real Madrid, just because I think having again rewatched and rethought about that match again, I think I was a bit too harsh on Fermin on Wednesday. I had said it basically his two primary assists. I did find him culpable in the first 20 minutes because the thing about Fermin Lopez, if you're going to start him in that position, he does not really win a lot of 50-50 balls. Like he just doesn't have the height, and he was losing that matchup in the midfield. And so if he's not giving you 50-50, if he's not winning 50-50 balls, of course he's going to make those primary assists. But what I kind of took for granted was the third man runs that he was consistently making, that even though they weren't finding, he was creating space for his teammates. And, that's one of those things where on first watch, I can't pick up a third man run, obviously, because a lot of times you're watching the ball or I'm watching, the two runs that are wide open. And I'm not necessarily watching, again, the third man run from Fermin. But again, on second viewing and looking at others' commentary, he only made 9 passes in the match, but 8 of those were completed. 2 of those were primary assists. And Fermin Lopez, very much like people were getting on me too, that I kind of split my tune. I've very much said Rafinha, even under Xavi, I always have given Rafinha credit for being as good as the player with the function he's being asked to do. But now that he's playing basically like a superstar in world football, like it's no longer functional. It's like just Rafinha just excelled, and he's a better player than at his age, coming from Leeds, and then to Barcelona, like that. We never expected this kind of level out of Rafinha. I mean, the
well,
level, the jump up that he's taken. I think this is a ceiling that he has crashed through the glass ceiling. He is, Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, where Flick is Willy Wonka, and they're going through the glass ceiling and the elevator into the sky. I never expected from Rafinha. In the case of Fermi Lopez, again, I do say a little more culpa here because, the things he was doing were things that I did not see on first viewing. And it did take, again, that second watch to say, okay, he's just creating space. Like the reason why I even mentioned in the tactics board, if for people who watch, again, watch the 5 headlines, because now on Big Up, which I recommend, 3 p.m., I will have the watch along on Big Up. After 2:30 p.m. tomorrow, we will have the preview for Real Madrid. I'll do 30 minutes or 25 minutes of preview, and then we're going to move over to Big Up. Because we go on Big Up, because I have a tactics board to use, and that's a great fun. And you know me, I really enjoy just being able to, little poke around with the arrows and things like that. Anyway, I keep calling it this little circle of fun, and I've been getting some suggestions. Put it in the comments or hit me up on social media if you're listening for the question or for names for that little circle I keep saying. When Barcelona, regardless if it's on the left side or the right side, when they overload the midfield, which they did so well against Sevilla, which is why they won by the margin they did. And there were moments, they picked their moments yesterday as when they overloaded the midfield against Bayern Munich, and it worked so well to good effect, including in the first minute. They had a game plan. Again, Lewandowski drops in, pulls out Keem. Upamecano, I don't know if he was ready for the match to start. And then Rafinha finds a 1v1 with Kimmich, and he's off to the races because Fermin and Pedri, with Cásado supporting them to win that second ball, if one of them had lost it in that close control, Cásado was perfectly set up to recover that ball in that little circle of fun when they overload the midfield there. And so for Fermin, I just didn't give him the proper credit. I want to give him the proper credit. And then part 2 of that is that, Kevin, that La Masia, because of the way the club does it, and the way I always sum it up when I roll my eyes the best, is that if you go on the website, they say that Ronald Araujo is made in La Masia, even though he was 19, came from Boston River, and Pedri, even though he came at 16, I mean, Pedri's made in Barcelona. Like, it was just like he was 16 when he came. Like, I don't know what we're talking about here. He's still 21. He wasn't made in La Masia, but he was made in Barcelona. But anyway, La Masia, as much as it is an annoying talking point and annoys fans of all other clubs, I would just puff your chest out because Barcelona had the best academy in world football. Like, people have been getting on me fairly. I thought that Marc Cásado was going to be an average starter for a mid-table team in the Liga, and I said it for 3 years. I watched him displace Xavi Simons in the U16s, and he was a pivot then. And I said, this guy wins balls, and I think he's going to be a good player in La Liga somewhere. I can see him as a starter over a Fran Beltran for Celta de Vigo, and that's what I said he was. And now what he did last season under Rafa Marquez, when I said, all right, I mean, Bernal, you see how special he is. You see it. You physically see it. And then Cásado, I said, can he make that jump into the first team? Not only has he made a jump with the first team, but in the Real Madrid preview we're about to talk about, I'm almost putting him in pen in that starting lineup because Frankie de Jong is not completely healthy, nor do I think that he can function in... Wait. I'm not saying he's a bum. I'm saying that this is not about daring down Frankie de Jong. This is about praising Marc Cásado. For me to say that Marc Cásado is almost a written-in pen starter against Real Madrid in El Clásico in October is unfathomable. So as much as I'm apologizing to people for saying that I thought he was just going to be a Liga starter and I didn't know if his future was at Barcelona, the fact that he is, again, turned into, in 3 months in the first team with Barcelona, what, again, Rafa Marquez, that he credited for helping him become the player that he is today in the last 2 seasons, but then for Flick to raise his level and to make him almost irreplaceable against Real Madrid, I couldn't fathom that. And again, what I say is that fans of other teams can get annoyed because La Masia is annoying. It is. It's, La Masia producing all these talents and everyone else, it's just because they're jealous. But it's true. Like, it's just, there's a secret sauce. And these players, Iniesta, who is, again, my all-time favorite, those stories about Iniesta aren't just, for propaganda or whatever. He had the mentality. He was homesick and he cried. And when he was 14, he came and all those things. Yet those players are unfathomable. Like, they do not panic. There's something about La Masia players that the moment is never too big. Lamine Yamal was like, I'm 17. I don't care. This is Bayern Munich. Pau Cubarsí, we didn't even say his name yet. He was like, but with his ball playing out of the back, Cubarsí's 17, and he was not deterred by a Bayern Munich press that beat his childhood club. Well, no, he came from Girona. But anyway, that beat his the childhood club when he was 8 years old, that beat them 8-2. And he was what? what? Let me do the math here real quick. He was 13 at the time, 12, 13, right? So that was like a nightmare for a teenage boy, 12, 13 years old. Like that is personality defining. And it was 8-2 when he watched that, right, as a youngster in the academy, and yet 17, completely composed. Fermin Lopez, 21. Pedri, 21. Costado, 21. And then, looking at the bench, I was worried at who they were going to put on the field. But regardless of who they put on, if it was Ansu, well, they did put on Ansu Fati. And Ansu Fati, say what you about physically, but mentality-wise, he still fits in it all too. Like the La Masia stuff. Like they don't quit, and they do not panic in big moments like this. And to me, the La Masia praise I'm giving today, Kevin, isn't about the physical, technical skills and all these things about how other teams how do you produce talented players like that. To me, the praise for La Masia yesterday is the mentality. You have teenagers who are not being overrun by the moment when it's 1-1. You have literal children who could barely drink in the United States or cannot drink in the United States of America, and yet they're like, hey, Bayern Munich is on the front foot, 1-1. They're winning possession. They're winning the second ball. Their press is putting us under pressure. And yet these 21-year-old kids and 17-year-olds said, it doesn't matter. We'll win the second ball. We'll figure it out. We'll be more physical. We'll go vertical. And, and again, on the other side of that, also having a healthy 36-year-old Lewandowski has been really helpful, I think, as well at the point of that attack. We didn't talk about him, but I want to mention Lewandowski too. And you can answer me and then transition to Real Madrid. I don't want to take too much time. So you can do all the things you need to do.
I think what vexes people about the La Masia talk is that its proponents act like it doesn't run in cycles, right? I mean, don't forget that, there was that fallow period where, people
Carlos
thought,
Lanya. That was it. It was Carlos Lanya. That was like,
right?
and Carlos Lanya also started from Getafe. Yeah.
right. And they thought, Ricky Pooch was the one. I was like the one who carries the bags. And,
No. The one that has become a star for the LA Galaxy because the LA Galaxy give
that's
him
his
the
level.
ball.
That's his level.
Also give him the ball every single time. Like he is magic with the ball at his feet. I'm not talking about the rest of it. I'm not talking
That's
about
his
him.
level.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I wrote a piece years and years ago where I said, La Masia makes players, right? They make pros. And all the professionals who aren't good enough to make the Barcelona first team, they're on someone's first team somewhere, right? And so for me, I think that, La Masia is fantastic. And La Masia produces gems in these cycles, right? And they seem to produce a batch of them at the same time. They never have like, the players never seem to like, come along and here's one this year, here's one next year. It's like, it's
Well,
nothing.
it's a class of, it was, what was it? The class of 68, the class of 87.
Mhm.
Now you're talking about the class of 03 to 07 or 08. 05 to 08 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. And
Sure.
so, I think that the vexing thing becomes when people act like, Lama Sia churns out diamonds like a mine, and it doesn't. It does churn out diamonds with these periodic, you know, cycles. And right now, it's in an exceptional period right now with Lamine Yamal, with a Kubarsi, with with a Casado, with Bernal. You've got Hector Fort in there. You've got
Well, I mentioned,
Gerard Martin.
the
There's
ones you haven't
all these
seen yet. I
players.
mean, Gerard Martin came from Cornea, but the ones again we haven't seen yet, like Kim Jeanette would be in any first team bench like around world football. Really, like Kim Jeanette is already that good, but he plays the same position as everyone else. Noah Darvish again, who came would be on most first team bench, right? And same thing with Guy Fernandez, Tony Fernandez, like they would be on these first team benches. Like those kids are already that good that we saw in the preseason. And yeah, and anecdotally, I just want to tell a quick story to human myself a little bit. So I went to a high school in rural Pennsylvania where in the U.S. now for my foreign listeners, I'm so sorry, but in the U.S. when you go to college, there's this thing called like advanced placement or like AP classes, and most will say well-funded schools, whether public or private in the U.S. have advanced placement classes, and my high school had some, but really not enough to, really make a mark in the college application process. And we had a small enough school where we did not send the majority of our students to college. Like that was just not the case. It was a lot of trade stuff. Again, it's a rural place, farm town, all those things. I was very blessed with my little group of friends, and there was like maybe 15 of us, and we all took these honors classes together. We took the few AP classes together. And I can say, yeah, I'm not calling us a La Masia generation or whatever, but I'm saying I am very blessed that some of my academic excellence and my desire to do my school musical and the marching band and play 3 sports and do all the different things I did, SGA and what did I mentioned? Yeah, choir and marching band and concert band, and to be as involved as I was, and to say, hey, this is we're in this together. This group, we're going to stay after school every day. We're going to come in early if we need to. We're going to get our homework done. We're going to get the best grades we can. And it wasn't even a rivalry between each other. It was like, hey, this is the standard. Like, if you want to not even be friends, like, we're not going to kick you out of the friend group. If you're not, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you gotta see you're out of the friend group. That wasn't the case. It was that, if we wanted to take honors classes together, so you got to read the books and you've got to get good enough grades to take the honors classes. And hey, we want to go to college, maybe not together. I went to a different school as my friends, but hey, we want to go to college and we want to make sure that we financially can like afford those things. And like, so if I would come in and say, hey, I don't know how, my family didn't have the most money. So I'd say, hey, without like some AP credit or without, scholarships, especially like without a scholarships, I don't know how I'm going to be able to go to a private university. Like, it's just not going to happen. And so that's, again, even just information. So I had friends who were also applying to private schools, even though they didn't go to a private university for college. And they're saying, hey, these are the scholarships that I've been looking at because those are offered to private whatevers. And I'm not applying to a school in New York, but here's the scholarship, right? And so we are just like feeding each other information as teenagers, right? Because I mean, my parents, they went to college, but it was a different age, and it just wasn't like they didn't really know how to set me up to go to like a Division I college and to get financial aid and all those things because they went to community college. And so for all that information that even my family didn't have, like my classmates and my friends wound up it was just sharing information. And that is what La Masia does. I mean, yes, the coaches get all the credit in the world, of course, and we barely know their names, but the kids themselves, like there's something about that excellence where imagine training with Lamine Yamal every day, right? Imagine saying, hey, like this, I mean, he was maybe the greatest, no, without hyperbole, maybe the greatest U14 player I've ever seen when he was 14. Maybe the greatest 14-year-old player I've ever seen. And so to have a kid like that, be your teammate and be your friend, you go, well, I mean, I want to be in the team with him. I don't want Barcelona to come to me on my 15th or 16th birthday and say, hey, we're not giving you a next contract, because when they turn 16, they sign that first pro deal can turn into a first team deal. So to be a friend of Lamine Yamal and say, hey, I want to be in the first team with him. I don't want to have to, watch him from the third division over in Barcelona or whatever. Like, I want to be his teammate. And so I think that does, what does that say about the, the phrase better than me about the rising, the tide rises all boats or something, you get the idea. But yeah, I think that's the idea of La Masia and that mentality that anecdotally, my friends, we've had our ups and downs. So we're not a La Masia generation, but hey, we all went to college and we all graduated college and we all wound up being able to pay for it. So the underlying success was there that we anecdotally just, if you have a group that's going to push each other, you can.
Yeah, that is, I mean, for me, what makes La Masia interesting is not that, the way of play and all the things that people laud. It's that when a player comes out of there, because La Masia beats the B team, they come out with the right mentality, with a professional mentality. And whether they are good enough, right, in terms of their level on the pitch, and that mentality is what they have, where if they are good enough, they're ready to drop right in. And I think that that is one of the more compelling things, as you mentioned, that mentality, right, about those players, and that's why when those players leave, they still go on to become professionals somewhere, right? They don't just go away, you know, because you need the mindset to be a professional. a I think of it as something a former cycling coach said about pain, right? Is, when you're a cyclist and you're racing and you're in pain, he said, some people walk up to the door, look at it and go, yeah, no. And then some crack the door, peek inside and go, nah. And then some just like kick the door down and deal with the pain, right? And it's that same kind of success mentality that allows great players to become. It's not just talent. Lots of players have talent, right? I mean, it's what is Gerard Delafeu doing now? You know, Adama Traore is the exact same player he was coming out of La Masia. It's like lots and lots of players have talent. It's that mentality that gets them to that next level. And I think, as I said, for people to act like Lama Sia does this all the time, is like this is normal. It's not normal, right? And I
Mhm.
think that the barren periods are not acknowledged as often as they should be, and that's what I will say about the Lama Sia bigging up is that you know, you get a player like Puig who finds his level in MLS, and people say, "Oh, he's come back to Europe." No, he shouldn't. He's fine where he is because that's where he is, right? Um, Mingueza, right? Yeah, he should come back to Barcelona. No, he shouldn't. He's fine where he is, right? That's his level, and I think that, I
You also
like if you,
anecdotally named two players that are excelling. Like again, Ricky Puig is an MVP candidate in the league that he is in. And I mean, again, I watch MLS like literally every week. I mean, it's one of the things I do for work, as people know. And so, like Ricky Puig, the fact that when I go to criticize him, I talk about rest defense and I talk about like his inability on a press because again, he doesn't have to do that job. It's not his function. His function for the LA Galaxy is to do what he does at a world class level, which is have the ball at his feet and do some special things because he's that special with the ball at his feet. But the team is built around him for him. Right. And not every club in world football is going to do that for you. Right. And so that is why he excels. And it's the same thing to your point about Mingueza, that Mingueza is getting a call up to the Spanish national team because at Celta de Vigo, that the things he's being asked to do are different than what he's being asked to do. The fires he's being asked to put out are things that he's better at doing than he was going to be asked to do at Barcelona. The function of what you're being asked to do and your role is different from team to team. Then Adam Delafeu did disappear. He actually just plays for Udinese. He's had a ton of different injuries, but he still plays in Serie A. Like even an example, right? Of like he's not even a fallen star. Like I mean, a lot of players would dream about being able to play for like a Serie A team for 5 or 6 years, having played in the Premier League for multiple teams. Like Delafeu has had a good career. Like there's no way that I'm accepting that he's like a failure. Like just like if he hadn't scored 300 goals or whatever in a year in La Masia, right? If he wasn't one of the ones who were called the next Messi, like he's had a fine professional career. Like no, like
yeah,
almost no notes. Like
I think that there's a huge gap, right, between superstar and failure, right?
100%.
And I think that, he's a solid professional, right? And so in that instance, right, I don't think he's a failure. I think that the hype outran his real ability. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing with Dama Traore. And some of that is because the B team coaches didn't press them to be better than they were at the moment because what they were worked,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that skill development, which they pressed Lamine Yamal to develop, right? They never, like, they just kept telling Traore, I run to the end line and dump it across. And okay, cool. Thank you for your service. And so he went up at the first team where defenders were bigger and faster and stronger. And suddenly that our run the end line and throw it across didn't work. Or it didn't work as well. Or yeah, and maybe he would have been a much more lauded player had he had someone like Lewandowski, right, to put those crosses away.
Yeah.
But he is what he is.
Well, it's
So
also opportunity for Traore too, because remember he played right wing behind who was that guy number 10 for Barcelona for a long time that was playing number 10
can't
and like
remember.
right and that
Short,
expectation
right?
for him
Short guy.
exactly. So like he had what 5 minutes to score a hat trick to prove that he could like even like peel minutes away on the opposite side. Like he could never even play his own position, right? So it's like I'm not defending Adama Traore, but what I am saying is that time and opportunity is important too. Like for all you say about Xavi, like he not say got it right, but you could play out Lamine Yamal's last season and this season, 100 times, and hey, there are 30 or 40 of those where it doesn't go as well as it has because of some decision that another manager might have made. But Xavi made sure that he had the circumstances right for Lamine Yamal to make his debut for a year, and Hansi Flick has continued on that development in a positive way, right? And yes, Lamine Yamal deserves a lot of credit for his individual brilliance, obviously. But I'm saying is like the time and opportunity for Kubarsi and Lamine Yamal, like it doesn't have to happen that way, but it did. Even Kubarsi, he didn't arrive to the first team until December, and regardless of how you say that his call up was, those first 3 months for Kubarsi were unbelievable last season as a 16-year-old. And again, that is a testament to Xavi saying, hey, whatever his markers were for Kubarsi in the B team, he hit those and earned his way into the first team by December as a 16-year-old. And then there was no looking back. And so, I mean, that's again the little hints of compliments I do give to Xavi because again, not every young kid has to be in the right moment at the right time. But when opportunity does meet that, as I said, like Kim Jet may not make the first team, but I've watched that kid in the U19s and in the rare moments with Barca B, and that kid absolutely deserves to be in the first team somewhere already. And he's just 17 as well. But he just, where? Where's he going to go? Like, and let's do that now with Real Madrid stuff because I don't see how with Danny Olmo not fully fit and Frank and Young not fully fit and Gabi obviously coming off the injury. I don't know how, if you're Hansi Flick, you don't say it's Costado, it's Pedri, and it's Fermin Lopez again.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
what you did against Bayern Munich, the game plan worked. Do it again. There is nothing. I know you said that Real Madrid does have some of the antidotes, but as good a professional he is, I always underestimate Lucas Vasquez. And what I will admit is I used to say that him and Sergio Roberto were the same when Roberto was a starter under Luis Enrique. But yes, Lucas Vasquez has had a better career than Sergio Roberto, and I will admit that. But Lucas Vasquez is still not Danny Carvajal. And Lucas Vasquez is going to have to be looking at Rafinha. So all the moments against Dortmund in that second half when Vasquez got forward, even where he was in the position to score that goal, he better watch his back because again, he's got Rafinha coming this way as opposed to again, no offense to Bino Gittins, who also had a goal in that game, by the way, on his side. But the tools that Dortmund had, or the tools that they have seen in the Liga, because again, they've not played great in the Liga either, are not the same as what Rafinha and Lamine Yamal and Lewandowski are giving you right now in world football. So I want to say before people again are almost recreating that fear of Real Madrid have the mentality. They've yes, the Real Madrid, they're Carlo Ancelotti, and I'm not saying that Barcelona are like going to blow them off the field the way they did Bayern Munich. But I'm saying is that for all the fears I have against Real Madrid, look at the positives that Barcelona brought against Bayern Munich. And yeah, I mean, yeah, this game could be the same thing as Bayern. It could be a goal fest. This could be fireworks aplenty. It's El Clásico, and you throw everything out the window. Totally agree with that. But in years past, I use that argument to say why Barcelona, who were not as good as Real Madrid, could have, thrown everything out the window and gotten a result in El Clásico. I say this almost the opposite, that this really is. I mean, when was the last time you felt El Clásico that felt this 50-50? I think it's been
So
a while.
for me, the most crucial players are going to be Kunde and Akasaka because Vinicius,
Yeah, he's in
right?
form. He's good.
I mean, if you take if a Vinicius were to somehow not be able not be able to make the match, then Barcelona's a favorite, walking
Mm.
away, right? He's that kind of, and the form he's in right now, and he can make. Now, I will grant you that the two goals he scored against Dortmund were not particularly well defended, but that he could execute those goals in that manner with that pace and that
Mm.
finishing ability is absurd. He's the kind of player where you can, lock down for 86 minutes. And in those 3 minutes, he's got two goals and your team is in trouble. They'll have to find a way. My guess is that Ancelotti will start Modric because he'll want that initial control. And that means that suddenly, Pedri has someone because Modric, he also wins balls. And then I'm not that concerned about Mbappe. Yeah, I think that the thing about Mbappe is he makes the run, he needs the ball. So as long as you can keep him from getting the ball, right, which is where you need to control Vinicius, and you need to have someone playing the inside to cut off that pass to Mbappe, right? I mean, like when people figured out Neymar, right? You double team him, you you cut off his ability to feed Messi and Suarez. It changed the way Luis Enrique had to play that front three. With a Vinicius, he has dribbling, he has insane pace, he can score goals. He's a player you have to worry about. Once you resolve that issue, then you think about the rest. The player who's been left out and who might be a danger tomorrow because the way he uses space will be Bellingham. I think the real. I mean, don't forget that last season he was the one who did the damage to Barcelona, right? I mean,
Mhm.
for me, I um, posted about this today. The thing that worries me the most about this match is that the space in which Madrid have players who like to shoot, can score goals is the very area that Barcelona is deficient in shutting down. That's that gap, right, past midfield, just outside the box.
Mhm.
I mean, think about the number of goals that Madrid have scored from there. And it's also the one area where you're always yelling at the TV, why is that man open? Why is that man open? So if those men get open tomorrow, it will be a long match.
Yeah, I mean, I do worry about Inaki Pena in those situations as well. Like this is a moment where he is out going to command that line. Right. I think Inaki Pena, in terms of like weaknesses for Barcelona, does fall in that category a little bit.
Yeah.
And to your point, like Bellingham, I think popping up in the space that Bayern Munich weren't able to capitalize in, that I just talked about, when they push Costado and Pedri higher, that is where Real Madrid do excel. So I think to your point,
And
Real
players.
Madrid, yeah, I mean, and I also, what I will say though, yes, I feel like Real Madrid's strengths do play a bit to Barcelona's weaknesses, but I think having watched Real Madrid in the Liga, again, it's very much the same thing. Like Ferland Mendy has not proven this season that he can handle Lamine Yamal, or a player of his quality, and that means that Rudiger is going to have to come over and help out, and that's going to leave Fermin Lopez open in the same position he was in the preseason El Clásico last season when he scored that goal. So I mean, and Fermin Lopez did have a goal in El Clásico last season too, or am I misremembering that? People can correct me down. I think he did in the comments below. So it's like Rudiger's going to have to. You're going to still have to double team Lamine Yamal, right? It's a chess match, and as we look at the different permutation of the 11s, if this player moves here, there's going to be space here. If this player moves here, there's going to be space here. So as much as again, you look at what they did against Dortmund, and you've looked at some of the matches they've had in the Liga this season. If Barcelona can be disciplined, and it's again very much the same thing like Bayern Munich, if they can just have that individual brilliance on top of staying compact, being able to press for 90 minutes, which is something they have not done to Real Madrid, with the exception of the 4-0 in the Spanish Super Cup. That's the only time in the last, oh my gosh, I'm not kidding, going back to 2017, Ernesto Valverde's El Clásico, they have not been able to press consistently for more than like 75 minutes. You can't expect 90 minutes to press. It doesn't work that way. But this match is going to have its twists and turns. So I would say do not panic. At any point in this match will have its twists and turns, and I have no idea who's going to win, which is a good thing. So I know that's not like really. I know it's not like the coverage that people come here for, the amazing tactical preview. But I'm saying is that Lamine Yamal against Ferland Mendy, you could go down the individual brilliance rosters, and I say, hey, that's an advantage to Barcelona. You say Vinny against Koundé. To your point, if that's a wash, because it has been in the past, and then it also hasn't been because Vinny Jr. is freaking good. Like Vinny Jr. gets the advantage there, but Koundé has been one of the best right backs in world football for the last 2 seasons. So if you're going to trust a right back 1v1 to deal with Vinny Jr. in the moment, in form, what I'm saying is Koundé's on the short list. I don't think anybody can do it. But I'm saying is in the moment, in the form he's in, maybe he might be up to some kind of task to neutralize enough. Like, again, a 3-2 win for Barcelona is still a 3-2 win for Barcelona. So, I mean, Real Madrid will have their moments, but take the 3 points, get out of the match, and the big picture is that you're up by 6 points in the Liga. And at the end of the day, don't
So
forget it's about winning trophies.
Lewandowski, the biggest difference, or right, there are many differences last year to this year. The main difference this year is Lewandowski's in form. He has figured out that he's not an attacking midfielder or a 10, and he's playing like a 9. And he also has players who can get him the ball in Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. He will be a very, very interesting player because you can't leave him alone. And so with their back line right now, that back line is vulnerable, and it is vulnerable to a talented attacking trident where one player can create and 2 players can score, right? If you think about that run, you've got a 4th player who can score enough for Lopez. So, for people who say, well, you know, uh, Barcelona's outmanned, I think that both sides have antidotes for the other's weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Madrid is better in, forcing play. They get in the box, they create imbalances. They have, you know, players who can shoot from distance, running into open gaps as you collapse on Vinicius and or Mbappe, right? So for me, I think that it will require. I think Barcelona can win. I think people saying they should win are crazy, but they can win. But it
Mm-hmm.
will require a disciplined performance, right? And not just so every match we see about 15, 20 minutes in Barcelona where they go on mental walkabout. We saw it against Bayern. The problem with Osasuna is in those 20 minutes they gave up 4 goals, right? So they have these periods. If they have that same period, tomorrow they lose, right? Because so people talk about that Real Madrid mentality. What that mentality really is they keep pressing and they keep pressing because no opponent can remain fully focused 90 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And so eventually you slip up. And when you slip up, there's Mbappe, there's Bellingham, there's Valverde, there's Vinicius, there
Rodrigo.
is,
Rodrigo's
yeah, I
playing
mean,
good.
there's
Yeah. He's having a
there's
good.
somebody, right, who's able to capitalize on that gap. Discipline, smart ball control, smart ball movement. I mean, I think it's a very winnable match for Barcelona, but their front 3 will have to have an exceptional, right? They'll have to, if the front 3 plays at the level it played against Bayern, Barcelona win,
Yep. Totally agree.
right? Um, I don't think so. I think that Rudiger is exploitable. I think that Mendy will play very physically against I mean, if the ref allows that physicality, that will allow him to have more control of him 1v1. But if the ref, you know, I have no idea right now who the match caller is, but it's league of refs. It almost doesn't matter. If they allow that excessive physicality, then it will be a long match for Lamine Yamal. However, he should still be able to have enough room to create, and that is where Rafinha and Lewandowski. I mean, it's also the reason for me Lopez has to start because you can't control all four of them. And I think that, um, Pedri is really going to be pressed, right? Because he's not that good defensively. He wins balls, yes, right? But he's not that good defensively, and he's slow. I think that um, uh, Caicedo has really improved in his match reading, which makes his physical deficiencies less noticeable. But if that match gets helter um, skelter back
Yeah.
and forth, which team's in trouble? Because you can't play that kind of match against Real Madrid, right? So I mean, there's so many variables. I think it is going to end up in probably 2-2 draw. That's how I'm feeling about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, there's a number of factors that could make it 5-1 either way, right?
Yeah.
Or either way. It will really depend on how the match is called, B, how good, like the fullbacks for both teams are going to be huge. The
Yep.
match they have, I think, more than anything else, will define how it's going to go. I mean, as people know, I've been a little bit down on um, Balde. I don't think he has the necessary discipline to. I mean, much better against Bayern than he's been. So it seems like Flick must have sat him down, showed him tape, and said, "Look, you're being a headless chicken. Let's work to repair this, right? Have more calm on the ball, have more structure on the ball. Don't try to score a 1v1 goal every time you get the ball. That's not your job, right? So if Balde continues that progression and be much more confident, but right now that side worries me because there's always playing space for opposition when it's against Barcelona, right? Because the fullbacks pinch in, so there's always playing space, and in
Yeah.
that playing space with runners like they have and creators like they have, it's really dangerous.
Yeah, Balde is going to have to be really, really disciplined with the movement because Rodrigo, Bellingham, Valverde all have a desire to get to that back post when Mbappe and Vinny Jr. like to overload the left. So
Yeah.
Balde is going to have to track those runners really well. And we didn't really talk about Balde, but Kevin, time wise, I have to wrap it up because I also had to save a few thoughts. You said Rudiger, and my eyes kind of lit up because I have a few thoughts that I want to save for tomorrow at 2:30. Again, by the time I have this out, you've got a few hours. So 2:30 p.m. on YouTube. I've been doing live stream previews. So that's about 25 minutes. I've got a few more thoughts to preview this match, and we'll know the starting lineup by that time. So I think we'll have some more concrete ideas as to what both teams want to do, Carlo Ancelotti and Hansi Flick. And then at 3 p.m., again, down in the description or the show notes, you can go on Big Up and they send you notifications to remind you that I'm doing the watch along. Again, I have the tactics board so we can break stuff down as the game is going on. And then we do the 5 headlines after that. And then that'll be tomorrow night. If that's the only thing you listen to or watch is the 5 headlines, of course, I will have that late tomorrow night after I get to really soak in that game. It'll be a few hours after the fact. So that is tomorrow, 2:30, YouTube, live stream, preview, and then 3 p.m. Because, yeah, I think, Kevin, I don't need to take all of my ideas for the preview. Again, content is king. So as fun as we've been having, as much fun as we've been having, I want to make sure they have a little bit less to go. So, yeah, Kevin, thank you so much for this. I felt like it was going to be 30 minutes. I think I looked at the 18-minute mark. I was like, oh, we've been getting through it. But then as we kind of felt it, I think as much as I don't go, you and I, we don't go crazy. We don't, you don't hear the excitement and the joy, and you don't really hear it in our voices. But if you've been here for an hour plus listening to us, this is how Kevin and I share our joy. This is how we show our love of the football team that we care about. It's by giving you an hour of yammering and talking. That is our love language. I think I can speak for you, Kevin, in that way. That we're not going to have a party, and what are those things called? You know what I mean? You go to a kid's birthday party and you hear, and they the thing that
I don't know.
I don't know. It's, the party favors. I think they're just called party
Dude, I'm
favors.
retired. I don't know anything anymore.
I don't know. Yeah, no, but all my friends have like little kids now. So I mean, I sit in the whole time in the corner, just on the little gazoo type sounding thing. I don't know, whatever it is. All right. So if you want Kevin and I to have gazoos the next time we do a show, $3, as low as $3 on the Patreon is a good, helpful way for me to, maybe I'll get like a new mixing board or camera before that. But again, $3 for the Patreons, where remember with the watch alongs, you can also be a guest on the show, like on the feed. Kevin, you're the same way. If you are bored tomorrow, I want to join the watch along with the microphone and camera. We can talk about the game as it's happening. That is on the watch along, 3 p.m. tomorrow on Big Up. And then Twitter, Instagram, especially on Twitter for Kevin, down in the show notes and description below. You can follow him anywhere. Close Facebook group, Discord. That's where we have everything. And of course, hey, 20,000 was fun. We did the jersey review, but I'm still looking for 30 and 40. If I want to keep doing this, I got to make sure I can talk to sponsors. And the bigger that number on YouTube and the bigger the number on the podcast apps with the number of ratings, that really helps talk to sponsors as well. So just all you can do, it's for free. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, give a like, always the biggest help that you can do. Most importantly, though, I mean, Kevin, I guess I'll give you the final word, but thanks for listening to the Barcelona podcast. We'll talk to you soon, sure. But Kevin, go ahead. Final word to you before our Clásico.
I am not nervous.
All right, everybody, we're not nervous. So we'll talk to you soon after the fact with the 5 headlines and Forza Barca.